I want to pick up where we left off in the last block and talk more about infrastructure. The North American Arctic is very much an emerging economy. It has existing and rapidly expanding opportunities for private investment. But gaps in infrastructure and in investment are hindering development in the region. Joining us to discuss this is Clint Davis, partner and managing director at Acasta Capital. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
It's my pleasure to be here.
We've just been talking about sort of the city's needs. I look at the North and think there are huge opportunities up there, and there you can really see, you can visualize the lack in infrastructure. How big is the gap there, and how pressing is it to get that addressed?
Well, according to your other guests, the reality is there is no tracking of what the gap is. If you try to search to see what it is in terms of a monetary number, it just doesn't exist. But it's significant. To put it into context, the Canadian the Canadian Arctic landmass represents about 25% of the global Arctic economy. So it's about, the global Arctic economy is about 250 billion. We contribute only 2% to that global economy. And what that tells you is that clearly we haven't done enough to invest in infrastructure to spur that economic activity.
Can you point to like a specific project or a specific need that we, would be at top of whatever list would eventually come out?
Well, first and foremost, I think we actually take broadband for granted here in Canada. It is substandard, subpar when you look at the majority of Indigenous communities and northern communities across the three territories, as well as in northern Quebec and northern Labrador. This is something that's critical for our lives as Canadians, anywhere from health to education to just running a business. And this is something that just doesn't exist for our people.
And it's talking about stuff that's existing now, that's growing already at a significant pace. Right. What does it do in hindering the potential for new growth, the potential for new resource development, whatever it may be?
Well, it's huge. If you look at some mining companies, for instance, where they're actually looking, and in other jurisdictions, they would actually have partnerships with provincial governments to invest in basic infrastructure like roads and so on. The federal government, they have a clear mandate and they have a clear responsibility to invest in the North. And these mining companies actually have to invest on their own for critical infrastructure. And I don't think that puts these territories at a disadvantage.
I want to ask a little bit about your company, what you guys do, because you have a really unique and interesting approach to involving Indigenous communities, Indigenous peoples. And that's like sort of fundamental to how you guys have approached this, right?
For sure. So we're a small merchant bank. We actually are providing capital advisory and investment banking advisory service to Indigenous governments and development corporations. We're starting to see more and more Indigenous governments involved in larger scale transactions, and that's why we actually created the company over the last number of, about a year and a half, to see if we can capitalize on those opportunities.
And what is the importance of being able to tap into human resources, the people that are out there that know the territory and know the opportunities that are there?
Well, they're the ones that actually see the challenges day in and day out. They're the ones that experience the substandard schools, the substandard health facilities and so on, but they also see the real opportunity. They're the ones that are, particularly in the North, experiencing what climate change is doing to impact their own lifestyle. And so engaging those individuals, making sure that they can participate in a sustainable economy like the rest of Canadians is vitally important.
And is it also important to be able to tap into that in terms of ownership, in terms of their own investment, so they've got an ownership of what's happening on the North?
Unfortunately, we've seen the North has had sort of massive economic leakage. You've seen companies that go up to the North, take advantage of opportunities, which they should, because they're actually investing their capital to do so. And unfortunately, the majority of that revenue and profitability is going down south. We want to make sure that this wealth creation stays in the North for the benefit of the people.
I've been writing about largely industry in the North since I was a reporter in Quebec City years ago. And every time I write about it, every time I do something on the show, the pushback I get, not even the pushback, people sort of react and say, really? I think of it as this sort of vast, barren land. How do you counter that, especially when you're looking for investment? You're looking for people to come in and inject money.
Well, try to counter it to say, why don't you come up and see it? Only about 15% or less than 15% of Canadians have visited the Arctic. Now, having said that, it's extremely expensive to get up there. I've been blessed with the fact I'm from Labrador. I've been to Nunatsiavut on a regular basis. I've seen what the potential is, what the challenges are. We kind of identify ourselves as an Arctic nation, but are we really, when only less than 25% of our people have been to a region that is 40% of Canada's landmass?
Listen, these are all really good points. I'm really glad to get them on the show. Thanks for coming in today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Clint Davis, partner and managing director at Acasta Capital Indigenous.